All right, I'm going to take the liberty of asking the first question. I mean, this is a very dramatic demonstration of what the future should look like. As I'm sure you've discovered with many of your clients, the question is, how do we get there?
Pay me.
No, but you've seen our website.
Yes, I have.
Okay. What would it look like if it were the kind of connective distribution website that you think that
Right.
that particular news organizations need to move to?
Right. I think there's several things here. First of all, as many of my clients are newspapers and magazines, and they are running to the web as quickly as they can because they have to for survival. When they go to the web, like the New York Times, they drag the newspaper with them, which is a mistake. And when they embrace video, they tend to think they're making TV shows or movies that go in the corner and you can turn on them and watch. This is a big mistake. The web militates for a new grammar of journalism. Just as after Gutenberg inventing the printing press, you had punctuations, full stop, spelling. It took several hundred years to codify the grammar. When Gutenberg printed his first newspaper, his first Bible, he could have gone down to the basement the next day and published the New York Times. The tool was there to do it. But the imagination took 150 or 200 years to get to. The grammar, I think, of the web is going to be one of a tapestry. In other words, text, video, graphics, all intertwined. We often train print journalists to carry video cameras and use them as notebooks. So they'll record the event, not to make a movie, but rather the way a print journalist would take a tape recorder and record an event. And then they can come back and they can scrub through the video, and then they'll start to write the text, because a lot of journalism is still text-based. But as they write the story, if something may come along which is video-driven, and they'll take the video and they'll drop it into the text. So it's text, video, text, video, text, video. It weaves in and out. It doesn't mean you make a 5-minute documentary and then you have, page over here. There are more powerful tools now that are arriving every day. Everybody familiar with Twitter? Do you all Twitter? Anybody Twitter? Yes, right. You should all be Twittering immediately, right? You're on Facebook or social networks, you should get on right away. These are incredibly powerful tools. The marriage of text, video, social tools like Twitter and Facebook all bind together in this kind of new architecture of internet. Oftentimes, because we live in a linear world of limited space, we had so many pages, we had so many hours to fill in radio, we tend to think to ourselves, well, I can put this on the web, but I can't put this and I can't put this. The web is infinite. It goes on forever. This is the long tail. There is nothing that should not be posted. And the audience, curiously, will tell you what they want to hear. So if you take all the videos that you have and you post all of them, in a couple of weeks you will see, oh, this is the most popular, these two came after that, these, and nobody is watching these down here, or very, very few people. That doesn't mean these are bad. But this aggregation will tell you the direction the thing wants to go. So it is not just a matter of, oh, let's make some videos, put them on, have a TV show online, and we'll call it a day. It is a function of creating an entirely new grammar and architecture. And this takes time. Does that answer your question?
No, but it's a start. Okay, Jay.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. But my question always is, since I've been involved in several publications trying to make that move, is that sort of comparison with Google, for example, and specifically with Google. It seems to me that Google actually occupies very almost immovably that central nexus position, and that we are simply, my sense of New York Times and other publications, news organizations, we were all like the products or the individual books of Amazon up here. We were the content providers for them, and we were not the nexus. We were not. And so essentially it was an economic model that was bound to be a loser for the old dinosaur industry. And I hear what you're saying, but again, to some extent, what the argument you're making is that in a way news organizations should become like cameras or eyes on the world instead of interpreters to some extent. I know, and I'd like to get you to modify that, because it seems to me that the crucial function of journalism which is becoming less and less crucial or less and less practiced, is contextualizing, interpreting, understanding. And the temptation of the video world is to confuse presentation with journalism.
I think that the role here is not to simply put up any piece of crap that comes in the door. Your role is publisher, editor, and moderator, as well as creator of some content. If you look at most magazines are not made by full-time employees of the staff. Most magazines are made by commissioning freelance writers around the world, and there's an editorial intelligence to the magazine that creates it. Nevertheless, they've been able to cut the costs enormously and create a very, very good product. If the New Yorker had to hire every single person on staff that wrote for the magazine, they would go out of business. So your job, for journalists, I think, is, first of all, you must become a trusted destination. People come to the New York Times and the Washington Post because they believe and trust the brand. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the New York Times has to create every piece of content that comes in. But it does mean they have to moderate, they have to curate, they have to edit, and they have to sort of certify that all of this is absolutely true. That having been said, the New York Times can become a nexus for global dialogue at the same time. As long as it's quite clearly delineated, these are comments, this is editorial, this is news reporting, this is from us, this is from someone else. But the website allows you to do all these things in a very dynamic way. Yes?
Some people consider the radio journalists as the ghosts from New Bedford. What do you think about future of radio journalism?
Well, it's an interesting question. Radio certainly is still a vibrant medium in and of itself. And as radio, I listen every morning to BBC Radio 4, but I live in New York. But I listen to it online. It doesn't mean I want to hear it as television. But it does mean that I can go to Radio 4 and I can get podcasts that have been done the day. It's non-linear. I don't have to listen to the real transmission from Radio 4, plus I'm 6 hours, behind London, 5 hours behind London. So when I get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I can go to what was 8 o'clock news in London and listen to it at breakfast at home. Radio is still a powerful medium. That having been said, we had a deal, Kevin Close, who was, as you know, ran this place and then brought me in to do VOA. Kevin Close's idea at VOA was that we would take the radio journalists from VOA and we would give them video cameras, and then we would allow them to piggyback at the same time. I guess the difference is that in the old days, these people made radio, these people made television, these people made text. If you make all your journalists digital journalists, and they go out and they acquire in all media at the same time, then you create the platform here. Over here, people who have radio hear it. People who have television hear it and see it. People who have internet hear it, see it, and can feedback and participate into it. But it sort of changes the nature of acquisition. Yes?
Curious from your history, because a lot of what you're saying obviously is great. It's a great presentation. We appreciate it. But it's great to see it in practice, too. So who do you think are some video bloggers or websites that do video really well that we can look to and steal and copy? Because one of the things I'm, I guess, struggling with, a lot of the video blogs that I see that are popular are usually personality-based. One person that runs the blog, and they have a very larger-than-life personality that control it. So as an organization, how do we still become popular and compete with that?
Guardian, I think, has one of the best websites in the world. Alan Rusbridger has done a terrific job of taking the site into, and also Guardian does this kind of amalgam of text and video. Huffington Post, I think, does a very good job of editorial and video and text at the same time. Washington Post is less good, but the quality of the video reporting is actually quite high. New York Times, I don't like the format at all because they segregate the video, but if you look at the quality of the videos, particularly stuff like Nick Kristof from Africa, the quality of the reporting is absolutely, they have captured the quality of the journalism at the newspaper and injected it into the video, as opposed to saying, well, it's kind of the stepchild, we don't care, as long as we get some pictures, we're fine. So I think there's kind of a spectrum to go towards in terms of this, but my number one choice these days is Guardian. Yes? Oh, sorry.
I wanted to follow up just quickly off what Nino said, but then I had a question. But what do you think of the model of CNN's iReport?
I hate it. I just hate it. I hate it. Because it's accidental video. It's if you happen to have a camera and the tornado hits your trailer, go out and get some pictures. It's awful. I have a partnership with the Travel Channel, which I started 2 years ago, One of the great problems with cable broadcasters is they have to feed the beast all the time. Their viewership is dropping, their revenues are dropping. In online and now video for phones has driven up their demand for content, and they're in trouble. So I started a project 2 years ago with Travel Channel in which we run something called Travel Channel Academy, which is a 4-day course open to anyone who wants to take it to learn to shoot, cut, upload, and all that kind of stuff. It costs $2,000 to take the course, so we've made the barrier very high, so we only get people who want to do this. And then we have producers who come down and talk to them. And in the last year, we've created an army for Travel Channel of 1,200 people who are certified, they understand releases, they understand music rights, and they now are making content for the channel. At a much lower price point, obviously, but we understand who we're dealing with. Some of them are terrible, some of them are great, some of them are so good, the channel has hired them full-time to do nothing but travel around the world and make content for them. This model has worked so well that we are now about to replicate it with the Weather Channel, Lifetime, and we're in discussions with Discovery Channel to do the same thing. So I think if you wanted to do this, if you wanted to go this route also, the idea of creating like stringers in magazines, you know, people you know, that you've certified, that you've trained, that you've stamped with your imprimatur of what you require journalistically, that's kind of a very good second stream to feed the thing, but at least you understand what you're getting.
Well, my question is, you know, I like the language analogy, because I think storytelling through video is a language. I'm a video producer, and but it is something that you do see is something that is much more natural for younger people. You've been putting cameras in the hands of people mid-career professionals. What are some of the challenges that you've seen in teaching people that language?
Well, actually, my training has run the spectrum from, you know, 17-year-old kids to, I did, as I told Ricky last night at dinner, I did a retirement community called Erickson Retirement Homes, and we trained 165 people, 75 years plus. You don't get much plus beyond that, to shoot video, and that is now a channel called Retirement Living Network. It became a whole cable channel in and of itself. So there's no difference here. I think the greatest issue for us is teaching the storytelling, which you say is the most critical part of it. And from a conventional television, you know, in conventional television, we sit down and we shoot an interview with somebody, then we take the sound bites, we write some contextual stuff, and we slap some pictures on top of it. What we do is we reverse the process, and we teach people to build the story with the pictures first, and then to tell the story, to narrate at the end, to write the pictures, essentially. It's a much better way of doing it. But there is an architecture and a grammar to storytelling in video, which is very, very different. But it works at almost every level. I'm not so sure. Young people are better with the technology. When we run these boot camps, especially with like the BBC, we ran 5 years of boot camps. We mixed them up a lot. So we had 23-year-old kids in with 50-year-old, you know, veteran correspondents. And the boot camps went on for 3 weeks. And in the beginning, the kids were great. You know, we screened every night. We used to call them public praise, public humiliation sessions. So we would screen the video, and of course the kid stuff in the beginning was fantastic. The old guys were dying. But the old guys really buckled down and went to work. And because they brought 30 years of journalism experience with them, by the second week, they arced up like this. And the kids never got beyond a plateau, you know? They just couldn't get any better. So anybody can do this, but it's really a question of embracing the technology and understanding it.
Michael, you never mentioned photos. Dead?
Still photography. Oh no, still it's a very powerful medium in and of itself. I mean, a lot of my video journalists are former still photographers who've gone through the transition. P.F. Bentley, Dirk Kolstad, David Kennerly, they all came out of Magnum or Time and Newsweek, and they all work for me. But they do both, you know, and you can make lovely sort of essays of both still and video. But the essence of what we try to do with video is very much derivative of still. The model for all of my work comes out of W. Eugene Smith, who invented the photo essay for Life magazine. And when we teach people to make video and tell stories in pictures, we use Smith's technique of, you know, this kind of linear storytelling in pictures, but with video to tell the story.
Michael, can the monk ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Okay. First of all, I share your comment about the New York Times site, because basically their only interactive feature is this one small button among 50. Yes. That you have to really look to just find it if you want to see the interactive section. But you mentioned something about it's a mess out there. Yes. It's disorganized. Yes. Okay, first of all, is it, you mean YouTube? What do you mean exactly? And how do you see the future? Because after all, major media organizations are not going to disappear. They are going to assume the role of shaping content.
One might have said that about GM some time ago.
Yes, yes. But do you see a total huge chaos? I mean, if every minute 10 hours of video is being uploaded, doesn't the real thing get lost in that mess?
Yes, it does. Which is all the more reason why mainstream journalistic organizations with histories and principles have to embrace this and take control of the wave. It's a tsunami is coming of content. Several years ago, I owned a video bar and cafe in the East Village. Of course, we're from CBGB. And it was like an internet cafe, except I gave out video cameras and we had Final Cut Pro edit stations where people could edit. And one day, Al Gore walked into my bar just after he'd lost the election. So I gave him a drink for free. And Al came to me and he said, I'm going to start, I never met the guy before in my life. He said, I'm going to start a cable channel. I said, great. He goes, I'm going to make it history or politics. So I said, well, you know, here's another idea for you. There's this video revolution going on. This is 2000. All these people have cameras. All this kind of stuff is starting. So Al flew me out to stay with him and Tipper and two friends of his, and I brought video cameras, and I taught them all to shoot and cut in 4 days, and they were all making video, and they got it. They got it, then anybody could do this. So we formed a business called Current TV, which you may be familiar with, and we opened the doors, and suddenly thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of videos started pouring in the door. And the lesson we took away from that was, it was a mess. It was an absolute, unmitigated, and it still is to this day. Going through it and screening it and the rights issue, all this stuff, it's a disaster. So what we learned from that is that the appetite out there for regular people to do this is enormous. And the technology is available and cheap. It's no secret. What's lacking is the skill set and the training. And this is where you can really step up to the plate and empower people, but in a way that really makes sense. You have to teach people. The day after Gutenberg, you couldn't go give out pencils and go, okay, everybody write a novel. People had to learn to read and write. Well, people have to learn, they know how to write, they know how to read real good. They watch video all the time, but they don't know how to write. They don't know the storytelling. And even the technology is simple. Anybody, an idiot, can turn on the camera and edit something. But the skill set of journalism and storytelling is what you can really bring to the table here. Yes?
First of all, I would like to ask you if you still consider that Marshall McLuhan is relevant for the revolution you are talking about. Then I would like to ask you, do you think that copyrights would change, consequently, having in mind all the changes we are facing? Because sometimes they do look ridiculous even now. Yes. And the other question is, we have this ability and we have tools to do things multimedia, but we still are not capable to think and to shape things for that world. So what we should do, how we go on?
I think certainly still relevant today. I think he saw this before anybody else, but he would be shocked at the rapidity of which the village has become video interconnected. The second question was?
On copyright.
Oh, copyright. It's, you know, technology often runs ahead of law. This always happens. And in fact, you know, copyright was originally designed to protect music on sheet music, and when they first put player pianos in, everyone was devastated because it transcended copyright issues. I think in the digital online age, copyright is probably a dead letter. I mean, it'll take 50 years to unwind the laws, and maybe longer, but the notion of protecting anything that you put online in a digital format, it's unprotectable, and you just have to sort of accept that thing. The third question is how to think differently. This is very, very difficult to do. I mean, many of you have probably worked, anybody here ever work in an edit room on a nonlinear, like Avid edit system? Right. Yeah. Yes. You've probably sat down in front of, with an editor, done it by yourself. Have you done it by yourself or with an editor? You did it by yourself? No, I didn't. Or with an editor. So we start with the editor. You probably begin at the beginning of the film and you work your way towards the end, right? This is insane. Because the whole notion of nonlinear is you can dip in and out anywhere. That's the power of the technology. But because we've lived our whole lives in this linear world, we always say, oh, I have to start at the beginning. What's the first shot? What's the first line? On and on and on and on. It doesn't leverage off what the technology is capable of doing. This is a tragedy. When I went to the BBC, I spent 5 years converting the whole BBC's network to this notion. And when I pitched, like I did this kind of a talk today, the director generals, before they unleashed me on the BBC, they said, they're very old, the board of directors. And so Lord somebody turned to me and he said, when do you believe this change will happen? And I said, when you're all dead, because that's what's holding it back. Luckily, they decided not to wait that long. But it's actually true. The Israelites did not wander in the desert for 40 years because they were lost. They wandered in the desert 40 years so anyone with a memory of slavery would die, because they didn't want them to carry that into the new country. People who grew up in a linear world have a very, very hard time unwinding. So whenever clients ask me this question, and they always ask me the question, I always say the same thing, which is burn it to the ground. And of course no one ever does, because they're all frightened. But you have to. You have to, like the class we did this morning, I said to everyone in the room, everything you know or you think you know about filmmaking, I need you to forget. And the only thing you know from here on in is what I tell you. And it's very hard for them to do. But the more we cling, the architecture that we grew up with was one that was derived from a technology that is now defunct. And to cling to that architecture is destructive in terms of leveraging off the power that this can do. So the best thing you can do is get rid of everything you've learned previously and start from scratch. Look at the technology and go that way. It's difficult, but not impossible.
We have time for 2 more questions. Sabrina?
Very brief one. You worked both with commercial and non-commercial media. Is there any difference between commercial and non-commercial media outlets in how they resist the new ideas and technology?
Yeah, in my experience, the non-commercials, they tend to be more conservative in the beginning, and when they get it, they really get it, and they embrace it completely because it fulfills their mission. The commercial ones only see this as how to cut costs. And that's their primary interest. Oh, the cameras are cheaper. Oh, we can have fewer people. But they can't really embrace the new grammar. They don't want to. It's too difficult for them. They're only interested in bottom line. So places like Dutch Public Television, ARD in Germany, BBC, PBS, NPR, when they get this, and it takes a while because they're filled with very conservative people, much less aggressive by nature than the commercial broadcasters. The first hump is the hardest to get over. Once we get past the first hump, they go, and they go great. The commercial ones, much more difficult.
Question is about just credibility and of the production. I mean, you mentioned this YouTube and zillions of videos are there, yes. But many of them turn out to be fake or just whatever it is. So the question here is, if we just simply embrace this world when everyone can just throw, as you said, this junk into eBay or just YouTube or whatever. The question here is, and you say that just such establishments as the New York Times are creating just efforts that are almost invisible. So what could be done to sort of be still a valid and credible player? On the other hand, not to be a zero, like very professional and esteemed organizations.
I think that this is going to happen. I think you have to accept this as a given. This tidal wave of junk is coming very, very fast. And so I think that for professional organizations, first internally you have to accept and embrace the technology and understand it. And then you can begin to reach out and you can find, like in the world of writing, we democratize writing. There's 1 million people out there trying to write novels. 1 or 2 turn out to be, Philip Roth. The good publishing houses find them and assign them an editor and work with them and nurture them. They don't make them employees of Random House. I think your challenge here is to find the people who are good to nurture and to work with them as an editor and a publisher and to take their stuff and give it a platform that has a special prominence. And that special prominence is because it carries your imprimatur. And in this way, you can build a new world of journalism that is much more open, much more democratic, but doesn't compromise quality or integrity.
All right, I'd like to close with one question. If you were the managing editor of a major news organization, let's call it Radio Free Europe, how would your editorial process be different in this new world from the assigning the stories and who does what, using what platform? How would it be different?
Yeah, I think the flow is reversed. In a normal newsroom, the news director over here decides the agenda and then assigns the stories downward like this and then decides what can be fixed and what gets published. In In this world, the stories all come from here.
What's the here?
All the people with cameras and ideas who upload, or they send you emails, or
But without being commissioned.
without being commissioned. It doesn't mean they make pieces per se, but they see you as the point of publication for what they want to say. And then from those, your job is to decide who the best people are, work with them, to listen to this, because this is telling you where it wants to go.
I thought you said with current TV, the Al Gore effort, that was a mess, that you've got so many things
It
that
was
took too much time
because
to...
we never, well, that's because we didn't train people and we just uploaded everything. So if we had dipped into here and found the best people and nurtured them and listened to what they were saying, we could have gone this way, but we didn't do that. So.
I understand what the editors would do that,
yes.
select from this pool, but does that mean professional journalism is dead? I mean, because as Ricky, that ties into your question.
Yes.
We sit around in the morning and the managing editor makes assignments to the staff
yes.
journalists, but you're kind of saying you should be getting submissions from...
this process is going to take 30 years.
What happens to the staff journalists?
To me, they become the editors and the teachers. They go out and they promulgate this and they teach people what to do. That's your great opportunity here. But this won't happen tomorrow. This is a 30-year process. As the technology percolates out, as people get more adept at this. I mean, if you look at the web, all of these blogs and stuff, all right, 99% of them are just garbage. But it shows you there is a seething desire to go the other way. You know what? To have people say things. So if you can go and you can identify the very best people, and you have people here with years and years of journalistic experience who can grab these people and teach them and shape them into what you need. You can expand your reach enormously and expand the breadth of what you cover. And at the same time, it's a very fulfilling job, but it doesn't mean you go out, you do the story, you have a beer, you go home. It's a very different job. But again, this is a process over, you've got to have a 10, 20-year plan. Say, this is how we're going to transition, this is how we're going to locate the people, this is how we'll empower them, this is how we'll edit them, this is how we'll publish them. But I guess my bottom line, since we're coming to the end of this thing, is this is not an option. This is going to happen. This wave of people grabbing this technology and uploading all this stuff to this web, which will become newspaper, television, it's all going to go away. Everything will be internet, whatever it is. Even if you watch it on a TV set, it's going to come through the web. So this nexus of all this information, this is going to happen. And the question for you is, how do we mine this and focus it and use it for our end goal up here?
So what are our first steps?
I think your first step is you have to train the in-house staff. So everyone is adept in the technology and you understand it as easily as you understand text and word processing and stuff like that. You have to be completely literate in the technology. And then the second one is to open the door and start running satellite training operations for people who, by their own volition, come to you and say, yes, I want to do this, please help me. Maybe you have to give them cameras, maybe you have to give them equipment. And then you have to create a platform that allows this to happen.
Actually, Michael, we are peculiarly well, as a structure, as a structure, we're peculiarly well suited to do what you're talking about. Because, here we are, around the table here are the language service chiefs. They all have bureaus. They all have people here in Prague, but also in Dushanbe, in Ashgabat, and so on, all sorts of places one has never been to. And we're looking to those people to provide us with copy because no other news organization's got people there.
Yes.
And that's our trainees, not from many of us here.
Okay.
Let me ask a question. Very last one. You were talking about the numbers of stuff which is uploaded any given day,
yes.
And the leading stories that are, as you said, just the public decides what's interesting.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not really journalism or good journalism, no. Right? The question here is what is then the model, the commercial model, so to say. To still make this good journalism in this type of an environment that is completely anti.
I think this is the most important role for public service broadcasters because you don't need the ratings and you can step in and say, I understand everybody wants this. You know what? We have to pay attention to this. You can set the agenda, and that differentiates commercial commercial to public service.
Michael, thank you very much. It's given you much.